Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear brothers and sisters. Welcome to the Mainstay Foundation's Thursday night program. Inshallah, before we begin the program with a lecture by Sheikh Ahmed, I just want to remind everyone about the upcoming ziyarah in November. We still have spots open, so if you would like to reserve your spot, you can visit www.mainstay.us for more information and to register. And without further ado, let's welcome Sheikh Ahmed al-Ghazi with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. أعيدوها رحمكم الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. صلى الله عليك سيدي يا رسول الله. صلى الله عليك سيدي يا أبا عبد الله. يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة، يا ليتنا كنا معكم، يا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي فنفوز والله فوزا عظيما. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Send your blessings upon the Holy Messenger Muhammad and his holy family. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We gather here today to commemorate the Arba'een of the martyrdom of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. All of you are very aware of this event and are aware of the millions gathered in Karbala and the millions that are walking towards Karbala. No other gathering of humans on earth today gathers the same number of people as this holy gathering, this blessed gathering. And this massive gathering is nothing but the efforts of the Imams pushing the Shia to commemorate and visit Aba Abdullah al-Hussein every year. In fact, we have multiple narrations that state the recommended or the recommendation of visiting Aba Abdullah anytime throughout the year. Also, the same is for the Arba'een. Now, this event is a historical event, and it is important that we know some of the historical details regarding it. And it is also an event that we can take parallels from it and apply it into our lives. We will begin by addressing some of the historical details regarding this event. After Allah, salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The caravan of Aba Abdullah after the events of Karbala, when they were on their way to Kufa, to Syria, in the courts of the tyrants, Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad and Yazid, they suffered, and they suffered greatly. The fresh loss of their Imam, their father, their uncle, Aba Abdullah al-Hussein, their family members, the brutal treatment of the army of Yazid towards them, the fact that they were yelled at, they were harassed. It was not a pleasant experience at all. And as we know, that the verse says that لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها, no soul is burdened with which it cannot bear. And obviously, because they are the ones that are closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they suffered and bared the most. Now, what is commonly accepted by historians is that the caravan of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam arrived in Syria on the 1st of Safar. So today is the 20th of Safar. The 1st of Safar would have been 20 days ago. And we might ask, well, when did the caravan of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, Imam Zayn al-Abidin, Sayyidah Zainab, and their family members, when did they arrive to visit Karbala after coming back from Syria? There's a misconception amongst people that the caravan of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein visited on the 20th of Safar, which is today. And that is not what was relayed by most of our historians and our scholars. What has been most popularly relayed, first of all, is that the one to visit on the Arba'een was Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari, the companion of the Prophet. And he visited, and what is reported about the Ahlul Bayt, yani the caravan of the Imam, is that they visited somewhere in the beginning of Rabi' al-Awwal, as the dates of when they left Syria differ between scholars. Inshallah, we'll get into that after Allah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now, let's discuss some of the scholars and the works that mentioned that Jabir visited. Some of the scholars and the works, the grave of the Imam, and on the day of Arba'een. We find that Shaykh al-Mufid relays this in his book Al-Masar. We find Shaykh al-Tusi relaying this narration that I'm going to mention shortly in Musbah al-Mutahajjid, which is a book of ad'iyah that he has. It is also relayed and accepted and authenticated by more later contemporary scholars, such as Al-Hurr al-Amili, Shaykh Al-Hurr al-Amili, in his book, his famous work, Wasa'il al-Shia. And it's also authenticated and taken by the marja of his time, Sayyid Hussein al-Burajardi, in Jami' Hadith al-Shia. Now, this narration, we'll read it because it's a very beautiful narration, and it shows the adab, the manners should have when they are visiting the grave of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. A quick word about Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari. He was a companion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he was present with Amir al-Mu'mineen, with Imam al-Hasan. For whatever reason that's not specifically mentioned, and historians and scholars differ, Jabir obviously was an old man at the time of Karbala. He did not attend the war or the battle of Karbala, but he did come after. Now, Jabir also, a nice side note, is that we have also multiple narrations in different sources, and some Sunni historians mention this, that the Prophet told Jabir, you will be alive at the time of my grandson, Imam al-Baqir, and please relay to him my salams. And in fact, Jabir did this. So, Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari, this companion of great merit and virtue amongst the eyes of the Imams and amongst the Shia and their scholars, he was the first to visit, like we said. In his narration, he says, so he goes and he was with a servant. His name was Atiyah al-Afwi. Atiyah al-Afwi was a reliable narrator, and he was trusted and accepted amongst the Shia, rahmatullahi alayh. He says, I departed with Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari, may God have mercy on him, as pilgrims visiting the grave of al-Husayn ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. When we arrived at Karbala, Jabir approached the bank of the Euphrates, performed ghusl, then wrapped his lower body with a waistcloth, and covered the upper body with another. He then opened a pouch containing a type of perfume and scattered it over his body. He did not take a single step. Then he proceeded towards the grave. He did not take a single step without mentioning Allah. When he drew near the grave, he said, let me touch it, to his servant, to Atiyah. And so I helped him touch it, as basically he leaned towards it. And he collapsed upon the grave, unconscious. Atiyah goes on to say, I sprinkled some water on him and he regained consciousness. Then he said, Ya Hussein 3 times. And then said, O a beloved one who does not respond to his beloved. How could you respond when your veins have been severed upon your shoulders and your body has been separated from your head? I bear witness that you are the son of prophets, the son of master of the believers, the son of the ally of piety, the offspring of guidance, the 5th of the people of the cloak, the son of the master of the chiefs, the son of Fatima, the mistress of the woman. And how could you not be like this when the hand of the master of the messenger fed you, and you were raised in the lap of the God conscious and weaned upon Islam? You were pure in life and pure in death. And you were raised in the lap of the You were pure in life and pure in are not soothed by your separation, nor do they doubt in the goodness of your fate. May God's peace and pleasure be upon you. I bear witness that you followed the path of your brother Yahya bin Zakaria, the Prophet Yahya, who was also martyred and killed by his people. And this is the end of the narration, narrated by Ati al-Afwi. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. As we said, the popular opinion that the caravan left Syria on the 20th of Safar. Who relays this and accepts this? Shaykh al-Mufid, Shaykh al-Tusi, Radi al-Din al-Hilli, who was the brother, he was a scholar, and he was the brother of Al-Alam al-Hilli, and al-Kaf'ami, a famous historian, Shia historian, and amongst obviously other scholars. They stated that the caravan left on the 20th of Safar, and that it was headed towards Medina and obviously passed by Karbala. So the claim that says that they arrived at the grave of Imam al-Hussein on the 1st of Safar is not accurate. We also have other scholars that don't accept this, that the Imam arrived, or afwan, that the caravan with Imam Zayn al-Abidin and Sayyidah Zainab arrived on the 1st. Who also doesn't accept this? Sheikh Abbas al-Qummi, the author of the famous Mafatih al-Jinan, the copy we all have in our homes, as well as Muhaddith al-Nuri, a famous scholar of hadith in his time. He has a famous work, Mustadrak al-Wasa'il. He mentions this in his book. Also, Al-Alam al-Majlisi, the author of Bihar al-Anwar. And likewise, and this scholar that I'm going to mention predates all of them, is Sayyid ibn Tawus, who was at the time of Alam al-Hilli, at the time of the Hawza of Hilla, near the time of Shaykh al-Tusi. So they deem it improbable that the caravan landed or arrived in Karbala on the 1st of Safar. Now, this journey from Syria to Karbala, when the people that study distances and travel time, when we look at the distance between Syria and Karbala, it's roughly 555 miles. And like we said, those people that study the distances that are traveled say that to go by camel, by foot, the regular way that the people back then did, would take around 23 days if one was traveling, throughout the day, not at night. And 11 days, around approximately 11 days, if one were traveling night and day. There is an opinion that says that the caravan, when it left, traveled and got to Karbala in 11 days. But this might be considered inaccurate. Why? Because, as we all know, when the caravan of of Imam Hussein alayhi salam arrived in Syria, the speeches of Imam Zayn al-Abidin, the speeches of Sayyidah Zainab, the unrest that caused amongst the people, because if we don't know, in Asham during the time of Muawiyah, the Umayyad propaganda was so strong against the Ahlul Bayt that the cursing of Amir al-Mu'mineen was done publicly on the pulpits during prayer. So you had an entire generation of Muslims who grew up in Syria, who were born and raised on that Umayyad propaganda and had no idea who the Ahlul Bayt and Amir al-Mu'mineen were. All they heard was bad things about them. In fact, when the caravan went into Syria, people did not know who they were. When they heard the words of Imam Zayn al-Abidin, of Sayyidah Zainab, when they saw their iman, they could not believe that they were told that these people were people who did not pray, who were not religious, and then they saw them with the actions of Imam Zayn al-Abidin and Sayyidah Zainab. And the people seeing the caravan caused great that it got to a point where Yazid wanted them quickly out of Sham, of Syria, as quickly as possible. And so he commanded his men to take them. And now, because the eyes of all the Muslims, especially the Muslims in Sham, were on Yazid and his treatment of the Ahlul Bayt, he told his men to treat them gently, respectfully, let them travel at the pace that they wanted to travel, to not tire them. So for the claim to be said that they traveled in 11 days is to not tire them. So for the claim to be 11 days it is more likely that it is 23 days that it took them to cover. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now this opinion, and this not even this opinion, this relaying of the historical events that happened in Syria and the unrest are mentioned by Shaykh al-Mufid once again in Al-Irshad, A'lam al-Wara by Al-Tabrasi, and Ibn Hatim al-Amili in Ad-Durr al-Nadim. Ibn Hatim al-Amili was a student of Al-Muhaqqiq al-Hilli, also in the time of Hilla. So these are older historians that had access to a lot of resources, historical resources, hadith resources, and that informed of this. Now, we do know that the caravan of Abu Abdullah did visit Karbala on their way towards Medina. And what is also accepted by most of our scholars is that that is when Imam Zayn al-Abidin, brought the head of Imam al-Hussein and buried it. This is relayed by in Al-Amali by Sheikh al-Saduq, Rawdat al-Wa'idin by Naysaburi, a scholar, Bihar al-Anwar by al-Majlisi, and then Al-Luhuf by Ibn Tawus. And I'm mentioning all these different sources because it's important to know that when someone makes a claim or saying this information is taken from somewhere, it's good to know the source and who's the one that said it. Now, the final point of this little historical research that we've went into for a bit is, did Jabir meet with the caravan at all? And so because that we say that misconception is that Jabir met with the caravan on the day of Arba'in, on the 1st of Safar. It seems what is likely is that Jabir, so when we said he visited with his servant Atiyah al-Afwi on the 1st of Safar, he says in the narration, he goes on to say after, let us go to the homes of Kufa, implying that he wanted to go visit Kufa. And Kufa, as we know, Karbala and Najaf, it's not too far. I mean, for us today, but back then it was further, but it was still close enough. And he came all the way from Medina, from Saudi Arabia. So he told them, let us go to the homes, he told Atiyah, let us go to the homes of Kufa. And so it is likely that he went, and that when he came back, he ran into the caravan of Imam al-Hussein. And there is a narration that mentions this, that mentions that Jabir did meet up, in fact, with the caravan. But in the narration that Atiyah al-Afwi mentions that he went with Jabir, he gives no mention that he met with Imam Zayn al-Abidin, nor did he see the caravan. And Atiyah, being a muwali, being someone that is a muwali for Imam Zayn al-Abidin, who had love for the Ahlul Bayt, for an event this big to happen, to where the caravan comes and visits when Jabir first reached the grave and he doesn't mention it, is very unlikely. So what is more likely is that Jabir, like we said, visited the first time on the 1st of Safar, and then came back and met up on the same day of the day that the caravan came. This is all that we're going to mention today regarding some historical details. Same day of the day that the caravan came. This is all. Now, how and apply them into our lives. We hear and we know that no tragedy is like the tragedy of the Ahlul Bayt. So we're not going to say what we go through in life is the same as theirs. But that does not mean that there isn't parallels. And some of those parallels are what? There are three we're going to talk about today. One is that, so if we're talking about our lives, our journey, right, and we relate to their journey, one is what? That there are a lot of uncertainties that you're going to face. There's a lot of trials, tribulations, the road, which is the journey that is life. It's arduous, it's tiring. So what you can control, whether it's your mindset, whether it's your situation, that's something that's on you to control. Your rationale dictates you towards that, and the Sharia dictates you towards that. Control what you can. That is in the hands of Allah. And who embodies that greater than the Ahlul Bayt? They controlled what they could control, but imagine they woke up every day unsure of what new challenges were going to face them. And they persevered and they stayed strong. And we know Imam Zayn al-Abidin was shackled. They were harassed, like I mentioned earlier. And through all that uncertainty, they didn't know where they're going to make it, which child was going to die, which woman was going to die. And they persevered and they kept their faith in Allah. So once again, we have to make sure we're keeping that faith. And we have to make sure, which leads us to our second point, is what helped them persevere and stay consistently reliant upon Allah and controlling what they can control. They knew who they were. They knew their mission. They knew where they came from, and they knew where they were going. There's a verse in the Quran that mentions, and I'll say after Allah, salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, where they came. There's a verse in the Quran that mentions, in Surah Al-Zukhruf, verse 43, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses the Prophet. So hold firmly to what has been revealed to you, O Prophet. You are truly on the straight path. And we know no one else would hold firmly to the straight path other than the Ahlul Bayt. So they knew who they were. They knew what they were about. The question that we have to ask ourselves is, do we know what we're about? Do we know what we represent? Do we know that our religion tries to guide us in all aspects and affairs of our lives? If we know this, if we go and study and learn about our religion, we can reach that level of conviction where we wake up every day in the morning and we know what to expect in terms of we know how to handle our situations. And so that comes one of the laws that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mandates from knowing our theology, our beliefs, and many other things that are tied to the religion. The last thing is family that stuck together. In that time when they were walking from Karbala to Sham, they had no one but each other and obviously Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they stuck and they helped out one another. And this also goes back to us today, here, whether we're here, whether we have family overseas. Are we there for our family? Are we there for our neighbors? Are we there for our friends? You know, the Quran is very specific in saying that your relatives, your close ones, have more of a right upon you than others. It's good, for example, to give charity to the poor, to the orphans that we don't know. It's a very noble and commendable act. But we have a duty, first and foremost, to our families. And that's not just financially, right? In the West today, most of us are doing pretty good financially. But how about emotionally? How about mentally? Are we checking up on our loved ones? Our neighbors. You know, we all know the narration where Sayyidah Zahra, Imam al-Hasan narrates, that she would stand up in supplication until her legs would bruise from standing. They would swell. And then he asked her, what were you doing dua about? She was saying, I did dua for the neighbor first. So we have to take care of our own, of our people, of our community. There is one figure though, that, and in concluding, through all these events of trial and tribulation, his story truly breaks my heart. And it's Imam Zayn al-Abidin. Imam Zayn al-Abidin, so obviously him and Sayyidah Zainab went through all what they went through, but Sayyidah Zainab passed away not too long after the events of Karbala, probably a year or two, maybe a bit more. Imam Zayn al-Abidin, as what's popularly attested, passed away 20 years after the events of Karbala. And Imam Zayn al-Abidin did not spend a day without crying and grieving for his Imam, first and foremost, and his father, Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. I'll mention some narrations about the state of Imam Zayn al-Abidin and how this affected him so much. But in light of all this, before I go into these narrations, when we read Sahif al-Sajjadiyah and we see the emotion in those words, we see the heart, we see the beauty, we see that through all that struggle, Imam Zayn al-Abidin was able to construct such beautiful phrases that we see that his ad'iyah today, his supplications, are applicable for each and every one of us in all the different states that we face. One of these narrations is that in Kamil al-Ziyarat by Ibn Qawlaway al-Qummi, one of our respected scholars, rahmatullah alayh, and Shaykh al-Saduq, he relays, Ali ibn al-Husayn alayhi salam wept for his father Husayn ibn Ali for 20 years. Never was food placed before him without him weeping for his father al-Husayn, until one of his servants said, may I be your ransom, O messenger, O son of the messenger of God. I fear for you that you may perish from grief. He replied, I only complain of my anguish and sorrow to God. The same phrase that Nabi Yaqub said in the Quran. And I know from God what you do not know. Indeed, I never remember the slaughter of the sons of Fatima without tears choking me because of it. In another narration, Shaykh al-Saduq mentions in his book Al-Khisal that Imam Zayn al-Abidin wept for his father for 20 years. And never was food placed before him without him weeping. And a servant goes on to also tell him, has the time, this time the servant, we could say, was probably a bit disrespectful, or he was just caring so much for the Imam that he asked. He said, O son of the messenger of God, has the time not come for your grief to come to an end? He replied, the Imam, woe to you. Prophet Yaqub, peace be upon him, had 12 sons, and God concealed only one of them from him. And his eyes, he became blind. In the Quran it says, وَبِيَضَّتْ عَيْنَاهُ. Right, from the intensity of his weeping over him. His hair turned white from sorrow and his back bent from grief. Yet his son was still alive in this world. As for me, I looked upon my father my brother, my uncles, and 17 members of my household lying slain around me. So how could my grief ever come to an end? And the last narration I will mention is that this is a narration relayed by also one of our scholars, Sayyid Muhsin al-Amin. I'm not going to go and say this narration is authentic. It's just something that's found. And it's also probable because we know the Imam was shackled and chained. It is relayed by one of the companions of Imam al-Baqir al-Sadiq, Jabir al-Ju'fi, rahmatullah alayh. He says, when my master Muhammad al-Baqir stripped, so when Imam Ali ibn al-Hussein passed away, he wanted to do ghusl. So he took off his clothes, right? And he wanted to do ghusl of him. A curtain had been set up, with the Imam and his father, the body of Imam Zayn al-Abidin, and everyone else. Jabir al-Ju'fi goes on to say, I heard the Imam sobbing and weeping, continuing for a long time. I refrained from asking him about it until when he had finished washing and burying his father. I came to him, greeted him, and said, may I be your ransom? What was the reason for your weeping while you were washing your father? Was it grief over him? He replied, no, O Jabir. But when I stripped my father of his clothes and placed him on the washing board, I saw the marks of the iron collar on his neck and the marks of the wounds from the shackles on his shins and his thighs. My heart was moved with tenderness for him because of that, and I wept. What struggle? What more can one say? Bodily inflictions, emotional inflictions of pain, seeing all your family members being slain in front of you, seeing the captives, having to go to the court of Yazid and Ubaydillah ibn Ziyad and protect yourself and your family. Words can't describe it. And that's why when we say that mourning and crying of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam, it was done by our imams and is something that must be done by us. And we have to always make sure that we're commemorating these events because this is what the Ahlul Bayt wanted from us. And don't you dare think for a moment that what you're doing is something that, for example, is alien to Islam or alien to the Sharia. What you're doing is Islam. You are representing the Sharia. You're representing the Prophet. You're representing the Ahlul Bayt. The Prophet cried upon Imam al-Hussein. The rest of the Imams cried upon Imam al-Hussein. What do we hear in Dua al-Nudbah? The Imam says, Imam al-Mahdi ajallahu ta'ala farajah. He says, I will cry instead of tears, blood. So let us keep our hearts in the remembrance of Aba Abdullah, keep steadfast to our religion. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He blesses each single one of you, that He keeps your family safe and has mercy on your loved ones. We will now conclude with Allah salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
محمد وآل محمد. Ahsan Shaykh al-Ma'juri, inshallah. Just a reminder that the Macy Foundation will be hosting an Arba'een program, inshallah, tomorrow night and Saturday. The Macy Foundation will be hosting an Arba'een program, inshallah, night at the Vintage Bale Cultural Center. Now we'll proceed with prayers. So let's all direct ourselves. 7 o'clock, inshallah, tomorrow. Inshallah, God willing. Let's proceed for prayers. بعد الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر ولله الحمد. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله أشهد أن عليا حجة الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله وصل يا رب على محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين